After years of hiding, he finally traveled to meet his family with a friend. The journey that initially seemed quite a fun became painful when a vicious gang, along with crooked lawmen, brutally attacked him on that particular day. Welcome back to Paramount Recapped. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. It's been 2 whole decades since anyone heard from Butch Cassidy. Back in 1908, he just vanished without a trace. But he didn't actually die like people thought. He's been living low-key in a quiet little Bolivian village, hiding behind a new name, James Blackthorne. Now he's much older, worn by the years, and after living a secluded life in the middle of nowhere, he decides it's finally time to go back to the US and face whatever's left of his past. What triggered this decision? He found out that someone he once loved had died from tuberculosis. That hit him hard. She meant something to him, and the news stirred something inside. He sits down and writes a letter to a guy named Ryan, who happens to be her son. In the letter, he explains that he's planning to come back home. It's a big deal, considering he's been living off the grid for 20 years. All this time, he's been raising horses, keeping to himself, and just letting life pass quietly. Before he sets off, he tells Jana, his current partner in Bolivia, that he'll see her again before he leaves for good. Then he heads over to a place called Pody's to sell his horses and tie up some loose ends. Once he gets there, he cashes out his entire savings from the local bank. He buys himself a fresh suit, plays some cards with the guys who are buying horses, and gets ready for his journey back to the village. It seems like everything's going smoothly, but that's when trouble creeps in. On his way back, he notices a dead horse lying around. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he stops to check it out. That's when someone jumps him. The guy tries to take off with Blackthorne's horse, but Blackthorne doesn't let it slide. He shoots the horse instead, causing the man to fall off. Sadly, the commotion causes Blackthorne's own horse to freak out and run away, with all his cash still strapped to it. Just like that, his money is gone. Turns out, the stranger is Eduardo Apodaca, a Spanish mining engineer who says he thought Blackthorne was one of the people chasing him. Night falls, and they camp out under the stars. Eduardo thinks he's done for and gets super nervous, especially when Blackthorne pulls a knife. But instead of stabbing him, Blackthorne just cuts him loose. Eduardo's surprised, but relieved. Then we flash back to the year 1900. In the US, Butch Cassidy is tangled up in barbed wire on a farm fence, struggling to get to his gun. 2 guys on horses are approaching, clearly armed and ready to shoot. At the last moment, his partner, the Sundance Kid, shows up and saves him. Butch, realizing they've pushed their luck too far, says they should run off to South America to escape all the heat. Back in the present, Eduardo tracks down Blackthorne again. This time, he's desperate for help and has a wild offer. He says he stole $50,000 from a rich Bolivian mine owner named Simon Patinho and stashed it in an abandoned mine. He promises Blackthorne a cut if he helps him retrieve it. Blackthorne, now broke thanks to his runaway horse, agrees, but only if he gets half. He tells Eduardo that every painful step he's had to take without a horse, and every dry minute without water, adds to Eduardo's debt. And if Eduardo's lying about the money, well, Blackthorne makes it very clear he won't hesitate to kill him. So, the 2 of them start crossing the harsh desert, with Patinho's men hot on their trail, barely a day behind. At one point, they stop at a cantina to grab drinks and ammo. Outside the abandoned mine where the loot is supposed to be, Eduardo starts getting paranoid. He suspects Blackthorne might plan to double-cross him and shoot him once they grab the money. He even pulls a gun on him, a weapon he secretly lifted back at the cantina. Blackthorne stays cool and calm. He acts unbothered and tells Eduardo that the gun is useless because he already took out the bullets. Eduardo backs off, but when they actually go inside the mine, there's a twist. Blackthorne was bluffing. He never touched the bullets. They find the money, just like Eduardo promised. But before they can even take a breath, Patinho's crew shows up. Thinking fast, Blackthorne shoots out the lights in the mine. Using the pitch black to their advantage, the 2 make a messy but successful escape, dragging the money with them. After that, they pick up some cheap horses and ride out to a cabin that belongs to Blackthorne. While they're resting, Blackthorne starts to think about everything he's been through, all the friends he's lost, and all the years he can never get back. Another flashback hits. It's 1905 in Argentina. Butch Cassidy is hiding out in a small motel, sick and on the run, with Sundance and a woman by his side. Things go south quickly when they get ambushed by local police. A detective named McKinley starts questioning them, but then the woman steps in, pulls a gun, and helps them make a narrow escape. Back in the cabin, Jana shows up to see Blackthorn one last time. As a parting gift, he gives her a pocket watch he won in a card game. At first, she kind of laughs at it, calling it some gringo toy, but in the end, she keeps it as something to remember him by. He asks her to stay the night, but she says she needs to get back to her family. Still, later that night, she quietly returns to the cabin, wanting to spend one final night with him before he leaves forever. The morning after that long, chaotic night, things only get worse. Two women from the group that had been chasing Eduardo manage to track them down to the cabin. They barge in, acting like they're just asking questions, but it's clear they're not here for a chat. One of them suddenly pulls out a hidden pistol and fires a shot that hits Blackthorn. Jana reacts without thinking, pulling her own gun and shooting back. She manages to take one of them down, but not before she gets hit herself, and her wound turns out to be fatal. As the gunfire settles, Eduardo shoots the last woman. It's over, but at a terrible cost. Blackthorn holds Jana in his arms, completely broken as he cries over her lifeless body. Later, Eduardo takes care of the bodies, dumping them in the nearby river to hide what happened. He also does his best to treat Blackthorn's wound, patching him up as best he can. But they both know there's no time to mourn properly. The rest of the crew hunting them is still out there, and they're not far behind. In a memory from years ago, Butch is seen at a train station in Viacha, Bolivia. He's with Ada, who's pregnant and preparing to head back to the US. She begs him to go with her, hoping he'll leave this life behind, but he says no. He can't do it. He watches her board the train, another chance at a normal life slipping away. Back in the current timeline, Blackthorn and Eduardo make their way through the vast, empty salt flats of Bolivia, trying to stay ahead of their pursuers. Their plan is to make it to the coastline, where Blackthorn hopes he can catch a boat and finally head back home. But their luck doesn't hold out. The gang chasing them catches up and begins to corner them in the open desert. Knowing what's coming, Blackthorn tells Eduardo to take the stronger horse and all the money. He wants him to head off in a different direction while he draws the attention. Eduardo hesitates, but eventually rides off, while Blackthorn is left behind to deal with the oncoming threat. Two men chase after Blackthorn. They shoot and bring down his horse, but before they can close in, he picks them off with deadly aim, one after the other. Elsewhere, Eduardo isn't having an easy time either. He manages to take out one of the men chasing him, but his gun runs out of ammo. Just when it looks like it's over, and a man comes close ready to shoot, Eduardo fights back with a knife and kills him. Another flashback shows Butch and Sundance in San Vicente in 1908. They're badly injured, running from the Bolivian army. But somehow, the soldiers think that two other dead bodies are Butch and Sundance, so they're able to slip away without being noticed. In the present, Blackthorn collapses out in the salt flats, weak and hurt. He's found by a salt farmer who takes pity on him and gets him to a doctor in a small town called Tupa. The doctor recognizes him and secretly contacts an old Pinkerton detective named McKinley, who's now living in Bolivia and long retired. McKinley comes to see for himself and confirms his suspicion. It really is Butch Cassidy. McKinley had always believed that the men who died in San Vicente weren't really Butch and Sundance, and now he has the proof. At first, he notifies the local authorities, but after thinking it over, he changes his mind. Instead of turning him in, he returns Blackthorn's gun and helps him escape again. Later on, McKinley finds out more about Eduardo and the money he stole. Turns out Eduardo hadn't robbed a big industrial boss like he claimed. The truth? That $50,000 came from a mining co-op made up of poor Bolivian families. These were people who had taken over the mines, trying to survive after years of exploitation. McKinley can't believe he missed such a big story. Everyone in the country had been talking about it. He tells Blackthorn that this wasn't the kind of thing the real Butch Cassidy would have ever been part of. Blackthorn is devastated. His mind flashes back to all the shootouts and the men they'd killed. He now realizes many of them weren't bad guys at all. They were only trying to protect their community. Despite the disappointment, McKinley decides not to report him. In another old memory, Sundance is dying. He's in terrible shape and asks Butch to do the unthinkable in his pain. With a heavy heart, Butch grants his final wish and puts his best friend out of his misery. Shaken by everything that's happened and the truth about the stolen money, Blackthorn makes his way through the Andes, determined to find Eduardo. The Bolivian army and the miners are both closing in, so time is running out. When he finally catches up to Eduardo, he confronts him about what really happened. Eduardo admits it. He took the cash, but from the cooperatives, not some rich tycoon. Blackthorn shoots him in the leg, taking away his ability to run. Eduardo thinks it's about the money, but Blackthorn makes it clear it's not. He says he never cared about who owned what, but lying, killing innocent folks, and dragging him into it? That's a line you don't cross. Blackthorn takes Eduardo's gun and leaves him behind with the money, knowing full well the army's coming. And they do. They arrive shortly after and execute Eduardo on the spot. The army, along with McKinley, continues the chase through a remote part of the Andes. But the commander, furious that McKinley helped Blackthorn earlier, punishes him by leaving him in the wilderness with no horse. In the final moments, we see Blackthorn alone, staring off toward the mountains. His body is tired, but his mind is full of memories, his old friends, the good times, and the chances he never took. He turns around for one last look before disappearing into the distance, maybe to start over again, or maybe to finally rest.